In March 2024, Brazilian footballer Richarlison opened up about how seeking psychological help saved his life. He revealed that after Brazil's exit from the 2022 World Cup, he developed depression and wanted to give up football completely. Despite the immense pressure and expectations athletes face both on and off the field, there's often little opportunity to speak openly about mental health without fear of judgment or appearing weak. In high-level sport, there is often a lot of bravado and an intensity that often tries to weed out the weak. So it makes it hard for the very elite to feel comfortable opening up or even admitting to themselves when they're struggling. But in a recent interview, Richarlison shared his personal journey, revealing that he was at rock bottom before therapy helped him turn things around. His story underscores the importance of mental well-being and seeking help when needed, even for athletes. So in today's video, I just want to outline a simple 4-step process that athletes can turn to when they feel like they're struggling mentally. For full disclosure, although I work in sports psychology and have 2 degrees in psychology, I'm not a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist. These are the people who specialize in mental health disorders and issues. I myself specialize in performance issues. Therefore, everything in this video is not intended as medical advice. So look, this is just going to be a very simple and to the point video. There's no wider explanations needed on a lot of what I'll say here. I just want to give you a sequence of instructional steps to consider if you're having a hard time right now and don't know where to start or what to do. So step 1 is to do all you can to help yourself first. So what I mean by this is just taking care of the fundamentals of good physical and mental health. For me, I consider these to be sleep, diet, limiting or cutting out substances like caffeine or alcohol, limiting or cutting out screen time, and ensuring enough time is spent on other forms of rest and recovery. And of course, getting enough exercises including these things, which if you're an athlete, chances are that one's already in check for you. So all of these things are interlinked, but I argue that sleep is your foundation. If you're not sleeping well, you're going to be much more volatile and up and down in your emotions, thoughts, and feelings. And athletes need more than the average person. 7 to 8 hours is an absolute minimum for an athlete. Some actually need 9 or 10, particularly after things like a double workout day. I know that's not always possible because of the demands of your schedule and if you're juggling sport with school or work, but it needs to become more of a priority if you're not hitting that minimum. And the ability to get that sufficient sleep is heavily impacted by consuming too much of substances. So for me, I'm super sensitive to caffeine. If I have a coffee past 2 p.m, I will struggle to get to sleep. Caffeine can take up to 10 hours to leave your system. So if you're smashing a Red Bull at a 5 p.m. practice, then of course you're going to have rubbish sleep and feel terrible the next day. On the food point, I personally try to limit consuming ultra-processed foods as much as possible. I read the book Ultra-Processed People last year and was blown away by how awful most of the things are that we put into our bodies. Take a read of that book and you'll realize how devastating a diet high in ultra-processed foods can be, not just for your physical health, but also for your mental health. Sugar crashes, brain fog, and an increased irritability can all come from these inflammatory foods that just wreak havoc on your hormones and neurotransmitters. So get rid of these high-protein yogurts, protein bars, and other convenience foods that you think are healthy, but are actually just filling your body with God knows what. Even things like porridge sachets, look at this ingredient list from the US version. Just eat regular porridge oats, full-fat Greek yogurt with nuts and fruit, and try your best to avoid any of these convenience fake health foods. The general rule of thumb is the less ingredients on the label, the better. I'm not a nutritionist though, so please consult with a doctor or a nutritionist before a dramatic overhaul of your diet. But for me personally, over the past year, I've really cut out a lot of ultra-processed foods that I thought were actually healthy alternatives and instead replaced them with more natural foods. And my mood is a lot more stable now. Then when it comes to cutting out or limiting screen time, that is an absolute must. You don't need me to tell you about the negative impacts of blue light on your sleep or just the endless social media scrolling that causes you to feel like shit in comparison to other people. The data coming out on the link between smartphone use and depression and anxiety among young people is just absolutely crazy. Look into Jonathan Haid's work in this space for a more comprehensive account, but we know it's a telling sign when the people who work for big tech companies like Meta and TikTok are actually the people who don't let their kids have smartphones or social media, as we saw in the Social Dilemma documentary from a few years ago. And then rest, when you think about it, is an abbreviation of restoration. It's often that you feel like you're running on empty, both physically and emotionally, because you haven't sufficiently restored your energy. So obviously, again, the big one is sleep, but it's also things like spending time in nature, hanging out with friends and family, just chilling, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, massage, or a hobby that's just completely unrelated from your performance domain so that you can actually detach from it. So as a first point of call, ask yourself, am I truly helping myself? Because in a lot of cases, when we start feeling overly anxious, overwhelmed, burnt out, or when depressive symptoms start seeping in, chances are we're slacking in relation to one or more of these things. So if you're having a rough time, look to fix those things first, and odds are you'll see some improvements in how you're feeling. If, however, you're still struggling mentally, then move on to step 2. Ask a trusted other. And the key term here is trusted. Taking that first step to inquire about help for your mental health or to ask for advice if you're struggling with something is difficult, right? It's again, as said, something that comes with a lot of resistance because of expectations, particularly as an athlete who needs to always appear as super tough and present this resilient persona. So this person could be a family member, one of your best friends, or your coach, or someone else who's part of the coaching staff for your team or sport. And the key here is don't overcomplicate it. You're not going to get interrogated straight away of, well, what's exactly wrong with you? And you may not actually fully yet be able to comprehend or put into words exactly what you are going through. So the simplest thing to do is to find a quiet place or time to speak with that person in person, or another means that you may feel more comfortable with, such as texting them. In either case, just say, I'm struggling with something right now and I don't know what to do. Can I talk to you about it? And if they are a trusted other, they may have already noticed that something is up in your general behavior or demeanor in recent weeks. And even if they haven't, because they are a trusted other, they're gonna say one thing and one thing only: of course, let's talk. They will do everything to help you. They'll listen, they'll help you make sense of it and just untangle a lot of the things going on in your head. Again, because they are a trusted other, they will keep things confidential and not tell or inform anyone unless you are a serious risk to yourself or others. If it's your coach in high school or college, they will have been trained or at least received some guidance on how to deal with these situations so that they can make sure that you actually get the exact support that you need. So the hardest step is making that initial ask, but just keep it simple. You don't have to justify or explain anything. It's just about acknowledging and making someone else aware that something's not quite right. An appropriate plan of support and guidance will then be found for you. And this ties into step 3. Typically what will happen then is if that trusted other can't help you themselves, they will help you seek professional advice. This could be calling up specialist hotlines as a starting point. For example, in the UK, there's Samaritans, and they're fantastic. They are highly trained advisors who can be called 24/7 and will provide an outlet to help you clear your thinking and just ensure that you find the right next steps for you. They don't judge, nor will they ever tell you what to do, but they do have a specialist list of organizations that can provide you with information depending on what it is that you're particularly struggling with. Alternatively, your coach may make the recommendation that you see the school or college counselor or engage in whatever other mental health resources are available to you. This will give you the opportunity to work directly with a trained mental health specialist, someone who's certified and experienced enough to get you the support you need. Depending on your situation, this may involve just talking about things through counseling sessions or having some therapy sessions. In other cases, you may be referred to your doctor or a psychiatrist for an actual diagnosis and potentially start a course of biological treatments, typically through prescription drugs. This can really vary case to case and in country to country on the exact protocol, so don't take my word 100% here, but those are the general things to expect. But just realize you are not alone in this journey, and the people that you come into contact with will just want to help you. Just like Richarlison said that having therapy saved his life, you have to trust that getting support is the best solution for you. These therapies are tried and tested, things like CBT, psychoanalysis, person-centered therapy, whatever. There's so many great options out there that will suit your individual need. But the main thing when it comes to talking therapies though is to make sure you find the right person for you. A lot of it does just really depend on the connection that you feel with the therapist or the counselor. So don't feel that if you go to someone once or twice and don't really click or get much benefit from it, that you have to stick it out or that you should just quit. Go find someone else, and any good therapist will be happy enough to refer you on to someone else in the profession. And so this ties into the last step, which is to start your journey. Much like working on your physical health, we all need to do work on our mental health. If we stop exercising, we become unfit, we lose strength and stamina, and the same goes for the mind. If we stop the things that keep it in top shape, we will unfortunately regress or find difficult situations a lot more challenging to cope with. So depending on your situation, it may be that you see a therapist and they will then recommend certain journaling exercises, self-reflection practices, mindfulness, and other things to do on a daily or weekly basis. If that's the case, you have to commit to them, because true progress in overcoming a bad period mentally, well, that's only going to come from what you actually do outside of the therapy sessions. And just generally in the domain of sport, which I know we haven't kept a lot of this video specifically focused on, it may be that you just need to make some drastic changes in the short term. It may be that you're really burnt out and you need a period away from your sport, an opportunity to not engage with it in any way for a couple of months, just to reset and then come back with renewed energy, focus, and optimism. Or it might just be that you need to develop a stricter self-care routine or a set of other firmer boundaries that prioritize your emotional and mental well-being over training and competition. Again, it will vary from situation to situation, but these are some of the general things that most people want to consider and we'll be able to get a lot of value out of them. And it also goes back to keeping in check the things we mentioned in step 1. The sleep, the diet, the rest and recovery, and then eliminating harmful practices and substances as much as possible. It's a continual process and journey. No one ever fully becomes immune to stress, anxiety, or depression, but I'm at least a big believer in the idea that we have a lot of control in terms of how we keep these things at bay and minimize them as much as possible. It just comes from being open like Richarlison in saying, look, it's fine to seek help. We can't do everything alone, and it's normal to have struggles and dark times. So I hope this has been helpful, and if you are struggling currently, I truly hope you can take some of these steps to get back to your best.